Welcome to our conversations with AI leaders in Africa. My name is Zenzele Ndlovu. I am the head of research at Machine Learning Africa. Please check out our upcoming event, the AI in Healthcare Summit. You can register for free on aiinhealthcare.co.za. Thank you. Welcome to another Conversations with Thought Leaders in Africa, where Johan and I chat with the leaders in the field of AI. And today we are very pleased to have someone who is doing wonderful stuff in this space. I will ask Johan to please introduce Peter to us.
Ndlovu, thank you. As we always say in these videos, there are so many organizations and people doing really incredible things in our local market. And, you know, it's so easy to think that it's only Silicon Valley or somewhere in the US or in Europe. But we love giving exposure and speaking with people and organizations here locally in South Africa who are doing really incredible things. So it's a distinct honor for us today to welcome Peter Reid, the head of AI at Mint. Mint is a Microsoft Gold partner and also a cloud solution provider working across the spectrum, Azure, Microsoft, and so forth. And Peter, so thank you for your time, and it's really great to see you. How are you keeping?
Good, thank you. It's great to be here. Thank you for allowing me on the show. And well, I guess I'm doing like everybody else, constantly adjusting week by week to the way things are.
Peter, thank you. What I'd love to ask you, maybe just to jump out of the blocks here, is the clients that you deal with here locally. What is the maturity when it comes to understanding what is AI and related technologies, maybe RPA, machine learning, and the like? And what do you find? Is it that you almost need to educate clients on it, kind of comparing apples with apples, or do you find that the understanding maturity is quite high?
It's certainly improving. I wouldn't say high at the moment. So, you know, when we started, we're talking about 4 or 5 years ago, AI was a buzzword. Everybody was entranced by AI. There's very low understanding of actually what it meant and how it worked. So we were in a kind of a storm then of everybody wanting it and nobody knowing actually what they wanted. So the maturity's improved a hell of a lot since then. I would say the part that's improved the most is that people know what they don't know, which is quite beneficial, obviously, to specialized businesses. But it's also, you know, we've had the hype cycle. Everyone was really excited. Nobody knew what they were excited about. Now there's a bit more of a reality and a touching base. The maturity varies considerably across different domains. Some businesses have their own internal AI teams. Typically what we find is that the one thing they know most in those cases is how hard it is to do AI because they've been trying it themselves. Some companies don't, but they've dealt with AI and they've dealt in specific sectors. And again, sometimes that works really well because they've had an amazing experience with it. And sometimes, you know, AI is just like any software, done badly, it can leave a poor taste in your mouth. And then some businesses not. But my overall sense is that if you, compared to where we were a few years ago, really good. Starting to get a good understanding in the markets in terms of maturity. In terms of international markets, I would say the same as most tech, which is we're a bit behind in the implementation, but we're pretty much up to speed in the knowledge and delivery.
Okay, that's good to know that, Peter. My question is you know, based on your, I would say that your performance within the AI space, you have been recognized as the Artificial Intelligence Partner of the Year with Microsoft in 2019 and in 2020 as well, which I think is indicative that you are in the lead in terms of the innovation front. Maybe my question would be, you know, what really, you know, makes you stand out? What is it that you do differently as Mint Group?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the answer, unfortunately, is a little more pedestrian than we would hope. So let me maybe put that into context. I think that there are a growing number of AI businesses in South Africa where the technology and the people are incredibly good, very smart, know how to tackle a problem and implement it properly. I think what we're missing is that we're on the low end of the maturity curve in terms of end-to-end delivery. So if you ask what I think we do differently, I think that we have smart people, yes. We have smart tech, which I love. We're also innovative, but we also focus on the delivery of a project or a technology end-to-end and not just proving it out. So let me maybe give you an example. We're dealing with a customer now who wanted a certain AI model to be built. And what they said to us is that they've approached 2 or 3 different companies who built them a model that worked very well, spectacular accuracy and performance. But it ended there. When they said to these businesses, okay, how do we take this into production? They would say, I'm sorry, we're an AI business. We built you a model, that software, you take care of it, which is something we specialize in. So I think it's a maturity curve thing as well. I think that we're good at coming up with the models. We're good at defining the use case. But I think we also have the capability to take that through to a real world implementation, which is, in my experience, about 70% of the work of a project or a certain solution.
Okay.
I think also you've touched on innovation there. It's innovative projects are hard because you're by definition doing something nobody's done before. So there's no place to go and Google and find out how it's done or where do you change things, etc. And that brings, 2 challenges. The one is your team actually implementing. It's a smaller one where you've got smart people who've got good experience, they'll work with it. The bigger one is keeping the customer on board for the journey, because you need a special type of customer who's willing to take that leap, who's willing to say to you, I know no one's ever done this before, but let's try because we think it's. So if you were to ask me what differentiates us, I think it's those 2. I think we have the experience in not just creating some really cool tech, but in also taking it all the way through to production. And I think in working with a customer, and it's not really about telling them everything's going to be all right, because sometimes it isn't. It's more about being open and transparent enough that they can see when things are good and when they're not. That gets you to that point.
Okay.
Peter, I would like to ask you like a 2-pronged question. The one is to very briefly tell us about the Mint Group, because I met your I think it was the 2 founders many years ago over a beer, and I every now and then see something in the news on RT Web or elsewhere. So it seems like the organization has really been growing in an incredible way. So the first question is a little bit more about the Mint Group, but I'm also quite keen to know, how did you get into the AI space? What was your journey?
100%. So the Mint Group, really, really fantastic group of businesses, been around for over 20 years now. Started as a Microsoft services business in the Dynamics CRM and SharePoint space, and really put a lot of focus on delivering innovative projects to customers and customer value. So the group's done exceptionally well. We've grown really nicely over the last 20 years, especially over the last few years where we've differentiated into the group of businesses. So we have several units within the business. Some are geographic. So we have an office, for example, in Texas in the US. Some are functional, like my unit is the artificial intelligence unit. And I think if I had to sum it up, I think that we've been successful mostly because we put a strong focus on the customer success. It's really rather deliver a project that makes the customer happy or walk away if you can't, than take the money and give it a good try. And then I must say, we have a strong relationship with Microsoft, and I think that we do a lot of Microsoft work, and the tech is great, the business is great, and it's a really strong partnership. So great group to work for. The only thing that the group values higher than keeping customers happy, even if that means hard decisions, is keeping people happy. We've got a very strong people focus. Hire the right people, look after them, give them good development, and magic happens. And as you can see, magic has happened, which is great. So in terms of my journey in AI, I got into software when I was very young. So I came straight out of high school and started as a software developer. And I worked on various tech. At the time, the internet was booming, so it was internet-based tech. Then it moved over. I fulfilled various roles. But in the background, one of, let's say, 2 of my kind of hobbies or interests had always been computer graphics or graphical kind of interfaces and vision, and artificial intelligence, which was not really well known at the time. It was largely theoretical and not a kind of boom industry. So I was very fortunate a few years ago to be speaking to Carl, who's the group CEO, and we were talking about business opportunities. And I guess at one point he said to me, what would your dream job be? And I said, well, if I could find somebody who would want me to run an AI business, that would be ideal. It's always been a passion of mine. And he said, well, the Mint Group is always looking for new diversification, and AI is something we want to put a focus on, so let's do it. So we started the Mint AI business. And then more recently, we did general ML consulting, so solving like fraud detection in banks and that kind of thing. But we seem to have specialized in computer vision, and I don't think it's coincidence that myself and the other founder of the AI business always had a passion in AI and graphics, computer vision, and artificial intelligence in the computer vision space combines both of those. So it's been an interesting journey. I love working on the technology. I think the concept of machines that learn is really cool. I think it's software, so it's got all the problems of software, plus it's innovative software, so it's got all the problems of innovative software, but it's got the potential to fill some gaps in the problems that software can solve. And I see it having great impact, which is phenomenal.
Peter, I believe that to address unemployment and other socio-economic challenges, the small and medium-sized enterprises will be actually pivotal in that. Now, given I don't know whether the perceived infrastructure needs to implement artificial intelligence, how can these small and medium-sized enterprises fully participate in the digital economy?
That's a great question. I think definitely the future of economic growth in South Africa and a lot of developing countries is small to medium. We're lucky in South Africa. We have a very strong entrepreneurial culture, which is something that some countries find hard to generate. We just have it. It just needs to be nurtured. In terms of AI, one of the reasons AI has been around for 40 or 50 years, but is only coming to the fore now, is the prevalence of cloud computing, which Microsoft uses the word democratizes the access to that. So to give you an example, maybe 10 to 15 years ago, if you had a great machine learning model and you wanted to train it, you would probably either have to buy 30 to 40 computers with these big GPUs, or go to someone like IBM and book some time on their mainframe. And now you can create a subscription in Azure or Google or AWS. You spin it up, you run it for an hour or two, and you shut it down. You pay, literally just for the time that you've spun up. So it's easier than ever from a processing perspective at the moment, for anyone to get involved. And from a knowledge perspective, we're in an age now where everything is shared quickly and shared well. So if you look at someone wanting to get into AI, they need three things. They need the knowledge and experience, and that can be gained in online courses. Self-learning at the moment is so much further ahead than it was a few years ago. Then it's in actually implementing the infrastructure, and you don't need to go out and buy 20 big servers to do it. You can have a Chromebook, or you can have your mobile phone even, and you can spin up some machines in Azure and run it. And then you need customers and entrepreneurs. That's what they do. So I think we're such an amazing incubation area for things like AI, especially because when somebody solves a problem across the world, in a month or two, somebody else could solve the same problem in a different way. And what we have in South Africa specifically is a lot of problems, a lot of unique problems, but that can benefit from the technology that's being grown both locally and abroad. So I think if we could find a way just to nurture entrepreneurship and support it in South Africa, it's almost like the rest of the problems take care of themselves, because we have so many willing and able people to grasp the technology and the problem and apply them. We just have to support that.
That's so true, Peter. I've dealt with people over the years who are often from very disadvantaged backgrounds, but who are exceptionally smart. I mean, most of them. but they'll never get an opportunity. So for me, and I think for Zenzele as well, this societal impact, how can we do good in South Africa for our young people, given the great potential of this technology? It's near to our hearts. Crystal ball question. And if you really knew, let's go to Monte Casino right now and spend some money on gambling. But I mean, if we have this chat in 10 or even 5 years from now, because it seems like things are changing so quickly in the tech space, where do you think we'll be? Is this technology overly hyped and we'll kind of have a bit more of the same, or do you really think we'll have dramatic change in what AI technology can do?
You know, I hate it when people give this answer, but certainly a bit of both. I would tend towards the more pedestrian, not more of the same, just more acceptance of the technology into our lives. So, you know, let me use an example. When we first developed face recognition technology that was good enough to start being used in real world applications, it had this whole scare around it. Now, you know, we're going to be tracked, and there's, you know, privacy, etc. And that is correct, and it was good to have a focus on it. But quietly in the background, our phones started unlocking themselves by looking at our face or our fingerprint. And now that is just accepted. It's kind of like it's become part of mainstream. And we don't look at the phone that unlocks itself from a fingerprint or a face and go, wow, what amazing tech. We go, you know, hurry up because I want to use the rest of my phone to do stuff. So I think there's kind of three ways of looking at it. There's the real cutting edge research, and that's the articles we read about where they're detecting cancer in scans, and where, you know, robots carry packs up Mount Everest, and those things are always spectacular, but typically far away from being integrated into mainstream. Then we have the cool tech that's emerging now, and that's things like self-driving cars. And I think in 5 years will be more of the same. They'll be better. They'll be closer to doing self-driving. They'll be a little bit better at what they do, but not quite there yet. And then we've got a lot of subtle background inferences of AI. So, I mean, the face recognition one's a good one, but things like the cameras on modern smartphones take spectacular photos. And a good 70 to 80% of that is AI processing. But it's not something that's in our face. We don't look at it and go, "Ooh, fantastic AI." We just go, "That's nice photo." So I would say the biggest effect would be we'd look around and sometimes not know it, and sometimes know it and not care that AI becomes a tool. It's just something that's helping us in our day-to-day lives. But like the computers in the 80s, phones, you know, any sort of IoT chips. There's a big fanfare about it, but we just turn around 5 years later and our fridge can talk to the internet and tell us when it needs a service, but it's not remarkable. We're not talking to our friends around a braai about it. It's just part of life. And I think that's a more pedestrian answer, but that's, to me, the reality. AI is a tech, and it's a breakthrough tech, just like hundreds we've had before, and it's following the same patterns as hundreds we've had before. It causes a storm, it causes great excitement, but we look back 5 years later and it's embedded in our lives in a lot of good ways and some bad, and we carry on. So that would be my guess.
Mm-hmm. It's very interesting. Maybe to look at that again, maybe further on when you're looking at the future, you know, of artificial intelligence. What worries me the most is about the things that have to do with biases, you know, unfairness, you know, especially when you look at industries like the financial services. Talk about loan underwriting and all that. In the future, do you think explainable AI is realistic? Are we going to reach a point where we will really fully understand how the AI algorithm makes decisions, for example, you know, with regards to why someone is denied a loan or why someone is given a loan? You know, I think that's the example that I can think of. But explainable AI, do you think that we're going to see that being fully realized in the future?
Yeah, I think so. Explainable AI is just a focus. It's just what you build into the tech while you're building it. Yeah. The fact that we've built things that can do seemingly amazing stuff, and now we're looking back and going, well, it's great that it can do this, but now it needs to also explain to us why it does that. That's just a technology problem. And I think we'll solve it. And I think we'll solve it specifically per use case or per industry up to a certain point. So to put it in perspective, we strive for human parity in a lot of AI segments. So a machine that can do something as well as a human can. And in some cases, it's obvious. You could go to a human who declined your loan and say, can you explain why? And they'd be able to say, well, that source is how it works. In some cases, it's not. In some cases, a very experienced heart surgeon will do something during an operation that they will put down to intuition or gut. In the background, they're using a not dissimilar process to AI. They're using massive parameter filtering to come up with a case that in the past has gone a certain way, and this time they think it's going to go that way as well. That is not explainable. They won't be able to tell you why they did it. And so there's a subset of AI that would do exactly that. Some things often are too complex to be explainable. But by and large, I think it's purely a matter of building it into the software. I think it's if we hadn't been trying to solve difficult problems, we'd been trying to solve difficult problems and be able to explain them, we'd be there already. So definitely, I think it's something that will emerge naturally.
Okay. It's great to listen to you because you explain things in a way that most people can understand. And I've often found that people who work in especially this field, it's often so much gobbledygook and tech and platform and stuff that I don't know what they're saying. But it's lovely listening to you. And I mean, it has been great in this short time to converse with you. And we wish you and the Mint Group all the best. And we're going to keep an eye out on the news feed about how the organization is growing. And hopefully as you build your empire, you'll also focus on doing good for our society using this technology. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. It's been a privilege to be on the show.